sorry, if the sun is shining, like recently we had the, what do you say, COVID pandemic, right? So if I walk into a area which is contaminated with COVID virus, I'll get it. But if the sun is shining in that area where there is COVID virus, will sun get it too, or will the place get uh, cleaned out or detoxified? What will happen? Tell me. What will happen? Can't hear anyone.
The place gets purified.
Yeah. So Krishna, thank you. So Krishna is compared to, has such pure potency, or to be pure always. Shuddham. Okay, so we cannot say that because Mayavadi philosophers say that actually God is formless, but when God descends to this world, he assumes a form under the three modes of material nature, and then after that he becomes formless again. It's not true, because Krishna is Shuddham. His property is Shuddham. He cannot be contaminated by the three modes of material nature at any point, time, place, or person. A Papavidham means is always free from all kinds of sinful activities. Even if he acts in a way that appears to be sinful, his actions are all good. There is no question of being affected by sin. So sin cannot touch him. Prophylactic, Papavidham. He's antiseptic in the sense that even an impure thing can become purified just by touching him. The word prophylactic refers to the power of his association. Okay, if Krishna is killing Kansa, killing is a sinful activity. But if Krishna is killing, it is Papavidham, free from sin. Krishna is dancing with the gopis in the middle of the night. It is Papavidham. It's not sinful. Manisi and Paribu. Manisi means is a great philosopher, self-sufficient philosopher, but no one knows him. And Paribu means greatest of all. This Krishna has explained many times in Bhagavad Gita too, that he is the greatest of all and there is no one who actually knows him. 10th chapter mostly. Other living beings are described here as beggars who ask goods from the Lord, and he supplies the things the living entities desire. If the entities were equal to Lord in potency, that is, if we were also omniscient and omnipotent, then there would be no question of their begging from Lord, even so after liberation, even after so-called liberation, or even for so-called liberation. Right? Everybody is doing, not everybody, but people, the history, they do so many severe austerities to attain a particular goal, but that means they're actually begging for our protection, which is fine. But it's just to cite the difference between Krishna and us, Manisi and Paribhu. Yathatyataha means has been supplying goods to living entities since time immemorial. The word means in pursuance with, indicating that the Lord rewards the living entities just in pursuance of their desires. So man proposes, God disposes, but God disposes based on one's desires, qualification, also mercy. Living entity desires something, Lord supplies the object of the desire in proportion to the one's qualification. Prabhupada gives analogy. He gives analogy of a high court judge. Says high court judge. If somebody wants to become a high court judge, the just having a qualification is not enough. That is needed, but just having a qualification is not enough. The higher power or the higher authority has to authorize that person to become a high court judge. Right? So we may be qualified for something, but if we don't get the mercy, we might not be successful. That is, there are many lawyers who are qualified to become a high court judge, but only very few make it, right? By connection, by special ways, etc. If a man wants to be a high court judge, necessary qualifications are insufficient for one to occupy the post. It must be awarded by some higher authority. Similarly, Lord avoids enjoyment to living entities in proportion to their qualifications, but good qualifications in themselves are not sufficient. Mercy of the Lord is also required. That is the difference between knowledge and more of passion. More of passion, the person thinks that I have to work for it, and if I work for it, I'll get it. So basically, they don't see a need for God because they see if I'll work for it, I'll get it. I deserve it. You know, but a person in knowledge says that yes, working for something is a part of it, but that's not the whole thing. Because ultimately, it is Krishna's mercy which defines whether one gets it or not get it, something. Unless we know our constitutional position as servants, we don't know what to ask from Lord, which post to seek. Correct. There is a saying in English says that more tears were answered from the prayers that were more tears were shed from the prayers that were answered. See, I'll say it again. More tears were shed from the prayers that were answered. Why? Because we don't know what to ask from Krishna. Why? Because we don't know who I am and what is my relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is why it is very important to understand this. Okay, in this, I'll read the question and you tell me if at any point you want me to stop. These are the questions from the book. Explain the meaning of Shuddham, Apapa Vidham, and how is the Lord unembodied. Any questions for this verse, or can I go to the next verse? Okay, it's Upanishad verse 9. Let's pay our obeisances to, this is Radha Damodar from Gita Nagari and Radha Govind from Prabhupada. So we are transitioning to another section of Upanishad now, verse 9 to 14, where the absolute and the relative are explained. The 9 to 11 verses explains the difference between the absolute and the relative in terms of knowledge, which is avidya and vidya. 12 to 14 verses describe the absolute and the relatives in terms of worship. So verse 9 to 11 compare knowledge and science and the respective designation for each of the followers. Mantra 9 discusses two kind of people who lack knowledge of Krishna, those who are simply ignorant and those who are followers of material scholarship, thinking it the end all of knowledge. Both kinds of people disregard the Lord's proprietorship and consequently are degraded into the darkest regions of ignorance. Mantra 9 also describes the results of cultivating ignorance and false knowledge. And 10 explains true knowledge brings a different results than either of these. Also emphasizes the need to take guidance from a dhira in the act of discriminating between real and illusory knowledge. We'll discuss it when we come there. And 11 discusses how one must know the relative positions of material and spiritual knowledge to transcend material energy and attain deathlessness. We'll discuss when it comes. So this is mantra 9. Andham tamha pravishyanti ye avidyam upasate tato bhuya eva te tamo yayo vidyayam rathaha. Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So, Prabhupada explains that godless civilization, which is directed towards advancement of education, is more dangerous than civilization in which the mass people are less educated. Okay, because the knowledge which is propagated without God consciousness is more dangerous than propagating less material knowledge. That's what it's saying. How? Prabhupada says that Krishna explains in 7th chapter Bhagavadgita, mudhas or people who are engaged in gross sense gratification. Ass is an animal that it's compared to because it is a symbol of stupidity. So mudhas are typical materialistic people without the knowledge, but very busy in collecting and working very hard so that they can get their desires met. So simple fools. Prabhupada gives analogy of such people or such activity with cobra with a jewel hood. He says, advancement of learning by godless people, material knowledge because it is misused, is as dangerous as valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. A cobra decorated with valuable jewel is more dangerous than one not decorated. Education has to be God-centered as you get the jewel without cobra. Okay, so somebody who's very highly educated, but they're not God conscious, then we can understand that this knowledge is compared to jewel sitting on the head of cobra. Means this person is very dangerous. They're thinking themselves to be very, very advanced, but actually the real knowledge is stolen by Maya. Another analogy Prabhupada gives in this verse is decorating the dead body. Says he Hari Bhakti Shubodhya, the advance explains that advancement of education by godless people is compared to decoration of dead body. So material existence is like decorating the dead body, trying to decorate it and make it attractive. But dead body is a dead body. There is no life there. Okay. So, so basically, material education without the knowledge of the soul has no, it's not living, it's dead knowledge. Two types of people are engaged in so-called knowledge. One is called Veda Vidrata, which think that they are very high scholars of Vedas. And Prabhupada gives example like, for example, Arya Samaj group, where they're reciting Vedas. They engage in study and their own interpretation of the Vedas in materialistic terms, like, for example, what to do, what kind of sacrifices to do to go to heavenly planets. And they establish worldwide institution based on it, their own parampara, proclaiming and glorifying one of them as Jagat Guru. Okay, so Prabhupada is giving us the pointers as to how we can actually protect ourselves in this world and not get cheated. If somebody is reciting very big Vedas, they have very big parampara, so many centers across the world, so-called Jagat Guru. But the context of the talk is that how we can study Vedas to meet our material desires, know that this is Veda Vedrata. They're very dangerous, misguiding people. And Vidyayam Rataha. Vidya means knowledge or study of the Vedas, or Rata means those who are engaged. But because they don't follow the teachings of acharyas who are in disciplic succession, they are ignorant of actual purpose of the Vedas and they fall further into the ignorance. They search out the meaning of Vedas that fit their own purpose, not knowing that the Vedas can be understood through chain of disciplic succession only. Krishna says, right, Vedeshta sarver ahameva vedya. They pose themselves as very learned of Vedic literature, but are completely diverted from the purpose of the Vedas. And the other class of people who are trying to get educated are Maya Pratagyana, or whose real knowledge is stolen by Maya. An example is self-made God, Mayavadis, impersonalist. Cannot explain how God is entangled in illusion. They say this is Leela. Unable to recognize their own foolishness that God cannot be entrapped by Maya, his own illusory energy. So those people are also dangerous. So there's so many people in the world who are very educated, very have scholarship in Vedic knowledge, but the Sri Ishupnishad is telling us that actually they are more dangerous than the so-called uneducated mass of people. So this is a verse from Bhagavadgita, right? It's a very famous verse. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. Means that what is night for all living being is the time of awakening with self-control. And time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective stage. So if we go and try to preach Krishna consciousness to Veda Vidrata or Maya Pratagyana, because they're already filled with the concept that they are very good, they already are very perfect, it's hard to make them Krishna conscious. Not impossible, because chanting Hare Krishna can melt anyone's heart, but it'll be hard. Okay, so this particular verse, we talk about kind of people different kind of people who are trying to cultivate knowledge, but the so-called people who are trying to cultivate knowledge are more dangerous than the people who are less educated. These are Veda Vidrita and Maya Vrita because their knowledge, Veda Vidrita, because they are using Vedic literature to meet their own desires, and then Maya Vrita because they are busy in acquiring this education and nullifying the presence of God. So explain the analogies in mantra 9 to describe the so-called educated human being, and why is godless civilization dangerous? Any questions? Otherwise, we'll go to the last verse. Tired?
Yes,
Do you need
Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu?
We'll go to next verse, Mataji.
Okay. So far we discussed chapter 8, chapter Isopnishad, verse number 8. What did you discuss? Can you tell me? Verse number 8 describes
Our Lord is unembodied, omniscient, omnipotent.
Papavidham Shuddham
Um,
Varnam Munibi Paribhu. Very nice. And then chapter verse number 9 starts to describe Vidya and Avidya, and different kind of Vidya and Avidya. Now chapter 10, it's peer-based and Radha Govind, verse 10, sorry, explains that true knowledge brings about brings a different result than either of these, and also emphasizes the need to take guidance from Dhira in the act of discriminating between illusory and real knowledge. Anyad evahur vidyayam, nyad ahur avidyayam, iti shushma dhira nam, ye nashtad vichachakshire. Prabhupada's translation: the wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and the different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. One can say that yatumat tatufat, like you can do whatever you like, but no, Upanishad say that the end result is different for one who is cultivating in real knowledge versus who thinks they are in knowledge, but the object of knowledge is not spiritual. Krishna talks about these qualities in chapter 16. He lists 26 qualities, but Upanishad we are taking 18 qualities which are conducive for which kind of nature, divine or demoniac? Which are
Divine.
Divine nature.
very nice. So these are the qualities which must be illustrated in the personality of a living entity when they are really in Vidya. Okay, so one should become a scientist or a philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. This Prabhupada said this. So conduct the research, but ultimately bring Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that all forms of material knowledge are external feature of illusory energy. Cultivating them, one becomes converted into an ass. It doesn't mean that one doesn't acquire or go for external knowledge, but it just means that one should not get succumbed to it. One should not be like a jewel on the head of a cobra that, oh, I'm so knowledgeable now. Give me this award or pay me this respect because I've done so much. No. So avidya versus vidya. Prabhupada talks about science in context of modern education universities. Students are not given instruction in brahmacharya. No, they have no faith in scriptural injunctions. Religious principles are taught for the sake of name and fame only, and not for the sake of practical action. By advancement of knowledge, modern man is simply being converted into an ass. Again, the same animal is used. So instruction of Vidya must be acquired from wise, sober person, Dhira, perfectly spiritually realized, one who is undisturbed by ignorance, material illusion, and a good teacher should be a Dhira. Namanishta Prabhu talks about it. Namanishta Prabhu said that we can only become Krishna conscious if we are cool-headed. If we are not cool-headed, which he means is Dhira, then it is impossible to become Krishna conscious, or it is also impossible to perform our material responsibilities nicely. So this is material education versus spiritual education. there's so much of time, effort, energy, money spent in the material education, but it doesn't bring about those qualities that Krishna mentions in the beginning of this verse. So this is the zest of this. So I'll read the question. So understand difference between vidya and avidya. And what is the meaning of the word Shushrama? What is the meaning of the word Shushrama? Iti Shushrama hi dhira nam. Ekatse iti chakshushe.
Hearing.
Let's see, huh?
Hearing. He heard from
Very
superior
nice.
authority.
Very nice. Shruti. Thus we have heard from the wise. Iti Shushrama dhira nam. So these were the three verses. Any questions, reflections, realizations, corrections? Krishna and Mataji. So verse
Hare
8,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, we studied about the qualities of the Lord which are described by Ama Bhagavat. And verse 9, we discussed the different kinds of avidya, which we mistake as vidya. Why it is avidya? Because it doesn't lead to the God conscious life, doesn't lead to the ultimate concept that Krishna's that define the qualities of Krishna as explained in verse 8. And verse 10 talks about that a different kind of result is obtained when somebody is cultivating vidya, and different kind of result is obtained when somebody is cultivating avidya. So one has to be very introspective to see that what am I cultivating? Am I cultivating vidya or avidya? Vidya is like, okay, I have this degree, this knowledge, this qualification. I'm getting more and more and more, but am I becoming more and more and more Krishna conscious, or am I actually losing time and not having interest in becoming more Krishna conscious because this concept of science is expanding in my life now? So that's avidya. That's not vidya, according to his submission. Okay, I'm not saying it. Any questions, reflections, realizations, corrections? 14. I think I'll go with only 3 people. I'll stop the recording and I'll go down the list to ask what